Did you love The Hunger Games? Partial to an episode of Game of Thrones? Then you're going to want to dive straight into this. It's dinosaurs in a world that kind of insists on putting people in boxes. I hope you are enjoying Bookenanny with me.
Books and coffee, that's all I need. Lost in a world of fantasy. Oh, indeed, from sci-fi thrillers to romance tales and horror stories that make me wail.
Hey lovelies, and welcome to day 2 of Bookenanny. So this video is, I saw it on a makeup channel where if they could only keep 15 products, what would they be? So I thought I'd do my own version of this, and I'm going to tell you about the 15 books that I would save if my house was on fire. Let's crack on. These are going to be in no particular order, and there is going to be an honorary mention too, because I really struggled to get this down to 15 books. So let's do this. But the first book I'm going to tell you about is The Passage by Justin Cronin. This is the first in a trilogy, and this is a post-apocalyptic. Is it? No. Okay, so the majority of this series is post-apocalyptic, but it does explore the reason why the world changes in the way that it changes. There's a lot of concepts in this series that on first read I completely missed, honestly. I'm not the sharpest tool in the toolbox. Is that I don't know. Anyway, you get what I'm trying to say. But this is a book that had me riveted from page 1, and I have reread this a lot of times now, and each time I read it I notice things that I didn't notice the first few times. I notice nuances in it, and I notice it's such intricately weaved story, and that for me is something that I really like. It lasts with me. I can enjoy a lot of books. I do enjoy a lot of books, and I give a lot of 5 stars, I give a lot of 4 stars, and there's, in some ways I'm not a particularly fussy reader, in other ways I really am. So, but this isn't just about the characters. This is about the whole thing. This is about the world. This is about the plots, I should say, because for this series, I would say there's...
Okay, so there's Amy's storyline, there's Wolga's storyline, then there's the brother's storyline, there's the scientist's storyline.
So there's at least 5 storylines, and what I could say are plots on their own, because if any of these were written about on their own, they would still feel like a complete book. So the fact that they have all of these plots interweaved, and they do connect with each other as well. So in some ways it's kind of like reading interconnected standalones in a trilogy. It is set in our world largely, but there are some magical elements or implied magical elements that are weaved in as well, and it's left to you to decide if they're actually magical or if there's some other explanation for them. It allows you to enjoy them aspects. Me and Matt have read this and we both enjoyed it greatly. Matt is very skeptical about supernatural stuff and anything that we can't like explain in concrete terms, whereas I'm kind of in the middle somewhere. I'm kind of open to it. I enjoy exploring these ideas. I don't know if I believe in them or not, but I'm kind of open to it, and I kind of enjoy believing in it sometimes. And there's certain things that I definitely believe in, and there's some things that I'm not sure I believe in. So it's kind of, and we come at our reading very much from them standpoints. I like to have these challenges and these, is this real? Am I making this up? kind of moments, whereas Matt very much likes to know what's happening and know what's going on. Whereas I don't mind not knowing what's going on, and I can go with the vibes as well. Whereas I think that's slightly different for Matt. So the fact that we both read this and both gave it 5 stars is testament to just how well written this trilogy is. Okay, next on the pile is The Blighted Stars. Some of you may remember me reading this earlier on this year. Me and Matt again read this together along with a few of you guys. This, I mean, it's not the most well written book in terms of there's quite a few plot holes and there's a few inconsistencies, and it's very dramatic from the word go. There's no rest in this. It is like bang, 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 bang. Stuff's happening constantly. And you don't know from one moment to the next if people are going to die, if they're not going to die, if that's a real person, if that's in someone's head, if, you know, where are they in the universe? It's not just on the world. Me and Matt really enjoyed reading this together, and I had it as a read along on Storygraph. For me, I could forgive these little sprinkling plot holes because I loved Tarquin straight away, and Naira I kind of had to warm up to. I got a little bit confused with her being, there's an element that I don't want to talk about because it's not in the synopsis, that means that people are called different things in different situations. So there is an element in this world that isn't talked about in the synopsis, but if you've read this you'll know probably what I'm insinuating, alluding to. But if you haven't read this, I don't want to mention it because it is a bit of a spoiler, and it is such a fun, once you get your head around what's happening with it, it is such a fun and unique aspect to this book that is part of the reason why this has ended up on the list. It's not something I've ever read before. I'll intensively read a genre for a little while and then I'll move on to another one, you know, eras and all that. I highly recommend this trilogy, but go in with the expectation that it is going to have a few little holes. I thoroughly love this series and I can't wait to get to the third one, and part of the reason why I haven't is because I don't want it to end. So I feel like that's a good indicator. Okay, next on the pile we have Gender Euphoria. If you've been a subscriber for a while and watched a few of my videos, you may have seen this pop up before. This, as you can see, I annotated. I don't know if you can see very well. Yeah, you can there. It is a collection of stories from trans people and non-binary and intersex writers. So these are all well written excerpts of people's lives, if you like, but it's focusing on the joy that they've experienced, moments where they've, you know, had realizations, they've been accepted as they are, that they've been free enough to be able to access parts of life that are often denied to trans, non-binary and intersex people. So this will always be special to me for that reason, because it's very easy, especially in the phase of life that I am, in terms of I'm relatively new to being open about being non-binary. I'm just exploring these aspects of myself now at the age of 42, and I'm just starting to grab at the freedoms that I deserve. So it's very easy in this part of life to be terrified and to be focused on how hard it is and how people react to that, intentionally or otherwise. People often say or do things that are exclusive of me as a person, not necessarily through any intention on their part, if that makes sense. So it is very easy to get stuck in that feeling of not feeling part of the world and feeling other and feeling outside of things. This really helped me feel human in the moments, and it made me cry tears of pure joy at times, knowing that people have felt these things genuinely and that I can feel these things too. Next on the list we have To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I read this for the first time as a teenager at school, and in tomorrow's video it will be mentioned in a very different way. But yeah, this is the first time in my life that I was exposed to, as close as I can experience, the experience of racism, where we've come from in terms of how society has been in the past, the evolution of that. And yeah, it really was an eye-opener, but also it's quite a hopeful story in terms of it shows that change can happen, that we are able to examine ourselves and society and move us forward. That is, especially in the times that we're in again now, it is, to have anything that can give us hope is very special, in my opinion. This does have words in it that are not acceptable, but the reason why this is still on my list of books to save is because it has these words, but it also doesn't glorify these words. It doesn't glorify the words or actions, negative actions, as being okay. It shows them up in the light that they're supposed to be shown, in terms of it's not okay. I think that's very important as a young person. Try and see the world from different lenses. And this really does that for me. Okay, next we have The Queen of the Tearling. Again, this is the first in a trilogy. I like a series, okay? Seems quite a simple, normal fantasy sort of storyline, but it's not. This seems to be a trend for books that last and stay with me as becoming very special to me. It is very intricately weaved. It is a fantasy setting, as in it's not our world, but it has a lot of it takes a lot from our history. It has a system that is feudal, which is really fun to read, actually, because you can hate some people and you can love some people, and you can really immerse in this environment in a way that I haven't in other books. And then on top of that, if you carry on the trilogy, there's aspects that weaves in right at the end of this one. I can't remember if you fully know at the end of this one or if it's kind of teased, but then there's some very sci-fi-ish elements, shall we say, without giving anything away, that I just absolutely loved. Okay, if you don't want any spoilers at all, then stop listening, mute me, and I'll put my thumb up when I finish saying this. But it has time travel. When you first read it, you don't expect it, trust me. We have Through a Glass Darkly by Hostine Garda. If you watched my November's TBR, I read Sophie's World. It was my TBR veteran. So this is a Hostine Garda book, Through a Glass Darkly. As Cecilia lies ill in bed and her family prepare for Christmas, knowing she will not recover, an angel steps through her window. But Ariel is no ordinary angel. At least he does not conform to conventional ideas of what an angel looks like, and says he likes nothing better than to sit around and chat about life, death, and the universe. Through a Glass Darkly is a springboard for a spirited and thoroughly engaging series of conversations between Cecilia and her angel. As the weeks pass and winter turns to spring, subtle changes take place in the relationship between Cecilia and her family, as she swings from fears of anger and denial, hope and despair, to a calm acceptance of her lot. She is preparing to leave. Chills. I literally get chills every single time I read this book. It is kind of a bittersweet experience. It is emotional. It is thought-provoking. It's intense at times, but it's so beautifully written and so immersive. And as you can see, it's not the longest book in the world. I read this most Christmases, but generally speaking, I do read this in the lead up to Christmas because I think it allows me to tap into that appreciation of what you actually have and just enjoying the moment kind of thing, because life is too short, and it's not as morbid as it sounds either. The angel character is just so amazing. I don't know if there is another character that I connect with quite on this level, and I think because I've read this a lot and for such a long time, way before I got to a stage of realizing that I'm non-binary, I think this angel, the fact that there is no he rejects the idea of gender and things like that, was probably speaking to a part of me that I was suppressing for such a long time. I'm not sure that if you're not non-binary or trans, I don't think that would be a thing that you can't connect with. I think it's still something that you connect with on a human level in a world that kind of insists on putting people in boxes, when how many of us truly fit in a box, you know? So I think it has got a wider readership. Next we have a book called Golden Thoughts. This is a poetry book, and this is probably not a book that I would have ever chosen to pick up myself. My mum gave it to my granddad. It says, "To Dad, thoughts are golden, aren't they? Much love and many kisses. This Christmas, 1978. Christine. The poems are nice, nice poems. And they're kind of cool in that they're quite usable, as in there have been times that I've sent cards to people and included one of these poems and things like that. It is very much of its time, the style of the photos and things like that, but it's sentimental to me. Next we have Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. It's a bind up of both books. So we do have like some artwork sporadically thrown in, and this is probably one of the few books that I prefer to read without the audio, partly because Alice in Wonderland, there's so many different audios and most of them are slightly different formats, slightly different, there's little bits left out or changed or moved around, and this, reading this just with my eyeballs allows me to just fully immerse in the world. I love this story. I did read this as a child first, and I think again because there's a lot of oddity and I connect really well with oddity because I am odd. I think it allowed me to feel seen when I was very young, and that's important for anyone, I think, to be able to feel seen, especially in fiction, because the world doesn't always allow that to be something that we feel. Next we have another book in the same vein, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I love this edition so much. I'm pretty sure it was kind of one of them things that you collect the vouchers out of the cereal packets kind of thing, and we got it that way. It was part of my library. Oh, hang on, I got this on Christmas Day in 1992, and I've got my full maiden name in there, Laura C. Cangelosi, because I was very proud of my books and it had a space for my name, so why not? I think this is probably a bridge. At some point a child has had hold of this because there's some crayon in here, probably one of the boys when they were little. I love this, and again I read this most years. Haven't read this yet this year, but maybe I'll get the chance to. Next we have Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. I never know if I pronounce his name correctly or not because I've heard it pronounced so many different ways. I think a lot of people, if they haven't read the book, they've seen the movies. It's dinosaurs. The book is very science heavy though. It's quite different to the movies, but I loved it in its own unique way, and it's very special because I think it's the first time I read a book and realised that I quite like science, that it's interesting to me. I don't think I ever realised that before I read this, so there's a lot that I didn't understand, surprise surprise, and every time I read it, I think I've only read it twice, but I do each time. I think it is going to be that, again, this is why it's on the list. It's something that I can reread with no problem, and it's almost like reading it for the first time each time because there's elements that I miss or don't understand fully without revisiting, you know. Next we have The Extinction Trials. This one appears in tomorrow's video again, as a few of these do. Little teaser for tomorrow's video. This is The Hunger Games meets Jurassic Park, and it is very true to that. So it is, I think it's a middle grade. Again, it's a trilogy. I'm so sorry for all these trilogies. But yeah, The Extinction Trials by S.M. Wilson. Okay, so it says, in Storm Chaser and Lincoln's ruined world, the only way to survive is to risk everything, to face a contest more dangerous than anyone can imagine, and they will do anything to win. But in a land full of monsters, human and reptilian, they can't afford to trust anyone, perhaps not even each other. Well written. No real plot holes that I can remember, but then it's a while ago that I read it, so I could just not remember it now. Yeah, I love the characters. Surprise, surprise. No one's surprised. I love anything with dinosaurs, so this was a book made for me, clearly. But yeah, if you haven't read this and end up reading this, please let me know, because I don't think I've ever met anyone or talked to anyone that's read this. So I would love to, if you want to buddy read it, I'm happy to reread it. Any book that's mentioned in this video, I am happy to reread. So if you want a buddy, just hit me up, you know. Okay, so we've got Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. I read this very recently. This is a horror book. It is the first Chuck Tingle book that I've read, and I am now obsessed with Chuck Tingle. I am going to have to read his backlist, and yes, I do know what that entails. If you don't know, Google. Google's your best friend. And you're welcome. So this is a horror story. It is, as the title insinuates, it is about Hollywood and the concept of gay people are allowed on TV shows as long as they die at the end. This follows a writer, a program writer, whatever you call them, I can't remember. This guy has got two of his characters, they are gay and they're in love, and he is asked to, in the finale, kill them off, and he doesn't want to. And then previous characters from previous horrors that he's written start turning up in real life, and he thinks, obviously at first, he thinks it's a way that who he works for is trying to manipulate him into killing off his characters. And well, you have to read the book to find out if that's true or not. I'll leave that there. It is such a fun time. There's some pretty moments. It's quite graphic in moments, but it is such a good book. Okay, and we're back. I'm sorry because I had to stop to start sprints on Beatrice's channel for the Sibs Book Club. Everything's linked in the description box below. If you don't know what the Sibs Book Club is, etc., there's info down there for you to check out. But anyway, so we're back. I am now quite yellow because the light has decided to leave us, so I've had to put my very warm lamps on. So I'm really sorry. I will try and correct this a little bit in editing, but I'm not good at this stuff yet. So we'll just, if I say yellow, we'll just pretend that's normal and move on. Next on the list we have An Inspector Calls and Other Plays by J.B. Priestley. This, again, I read this in school, and really the only part of this that I read is An Inspector Calls. I haven't read the other ones yet, but yeah, this was the first experience of a mystery that I ever read. And although this is a play and obviously formatted as a play, it was the first time I read a mystery of any description, especially set in this time, that really grabbed my attention and really sort of drew me into the mystery aspect. I did enjoy, as a teenager, trying to work out what the answers were, trying to spot the clues, etc. I do tend to have a notebook, or my notes are up open when I'm reading mysteries, but just to note certain things. And I definitely did this with the first Tom Mead book that I read, just because I knew I was going to be talking to the author and I wanted to sort of test it a little bit, test it in a way that I don't normally do when I'm just reading for fun or to chat about on my channel as a general rule. But I did want to be able to say to Tom Mead whether or not I worked it out or I didn't. In that case I didn't. But this one, I can't remember if I did the first time, but obviously on reread you do work it out, you do see the clues and you do enjoy it from a different perspective. But the fact that I picked this up time and time again, I remember it quite clearly, which is unusual for me, especially now that I read so much in great volume. I've learnt recently that the way I perceive books changes over time. When I'm talking about them, I often forget what I've said initially. So, and you can see this in conversations that I've had with people. Like, it is something that I've noticed a couple of times recently, and something that has informed some decisions that I've made for plans in 2025. In terms of, I'm not going to let myself read as much as I have this year. I will have read roughly 200 books this year, and that's insane to me, to read that much. I know there's lots of people that read a lot of books, but to go from someone who's lucky to read 4 or 5 books a month to someone who's reading 20 to 30 a month is, and I know that's because I've started this channel and I started readathons this year. Okay, and this one will surprise absolutely no one, unless you're new to my channel, in which case welcome. Thank you for joining me today. But this is my favourite book of all time. As you can see, there's many tabs. I have re-annotated this nearly every time I've reread it. Okay, so The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern is my favourite book, currently my favourite book of all time. There has been a book recently that has challenged that, but has not come out on top. So that was a moment I held my breath, I can tell you. This is a very whimsical story of an underground library-ish. It is magical realism. It is partly set in our world and partly set in this fantastical, magical world. There's good guys, bad guys, there's lots of queer rep, there's lots of love and interesting moments and whimsical and dreamy and just pure escapism. This probably taught me to ride that wave almost with books. Before this book, I probably would have DNF'd books like this because I would have wanted to know what was going on. But with this book, somehow something about it made me let go of that and let me just experience the journey, and everything ties in eventually. And some aspects are just a bit wishy-washy, and that's fine, you know. It is just kind of one of them things you kind of have to let go of the reins a little bit. But I think that's why it's my favourite. It's the one book that can truly let me relax into a world that's not mine. Okay, and number 15 on this list is Rebecca by Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I always want to say Daphne by Rebecca du Maurier. But yeah, this is obviously a special edition of the book. It is, I can't remember where I got this from, the Folio Society. Yeah, and I ended up buying another copy of this and giving it to a friend because I love it so much. It does have illustrations in there. I do love a book that adds a few illustrations in here and there. It does have quite large margins. It is a classic. It is a mystery to some degree, but it also has supernatural elements. It's creepy, it's gothic, it's beautiful, it's a masterpiece. The honorary mention is The Death of Grass by John Christopher. This is said to be the first apocalyptic horror story that came out. Again, it's a classic. Yeah, so it was first published in 1956. Again, it's not a massive book, but it is effectively, the title tells you what this is about. This is what happens to the world and humans when grass dies. And obviously you go into it thinking, well, it's just grass, you know. Yeah, it sucks. We like green, we like nature, it's good for mental health, etc. But you know, what real impact could this have? Just like bees and wasps dying out, it's something that we underestimate the impact of it happening on our lives and if we carry on living. So in this, it affects all food production because of the time that it's in. There's no fake food, there's no man-made food really. We would have a different situation now, I think, but even now it would have a huge impact. But also, this probably was my first experience reading something that made me think about how humans react in extreme situations. And that's something that really, this is why I like genres like horror and apocalyptic stories. This is why I like magical realism, anything. This is why I like historical fiction. These are common threads between all of the books that I read. It is things like testing humans to their limits is something that I'm intrigued by. I think that's because I'm interested in psychology and how brains work, obviously from a layman's perspective and from someone who experiences mental health challenges. These are things that intrigue me. When I was at uni, I did criminology, and obviously that's from a sociological perspective, but even that had a foundation in how the brain works and how humans behave in different situations, what makes us behave the way that we behave, etc., etc. That is like clearly something that I'm into, and this definitely would have been on the list if the list had been 16 instead of 15. So that is the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments what books would make your list. Do you have a list? Have you never thought about this before? And is it kind of a stressful thing? Because I thought this would be a fun video, and it was quite stressful, I'll be honest. It was quite stressful to put my books down to 15. It was a moment. I thought I kind of didn't have the time either, because I was just like, okay, what can I do in this 5 minutes before I have to go off and do this other thing? Don't give yourself 5 minutes. Give yourself at least a day. Thank you for hanging out with me today. As always, you have been amazing and continue to be amazing to me. And if you've made it this far, let's do... Is there a grass emoji? Let's do a green emoji. Any green emoji for the death of grass. Love you, bye.
Bye, love you.
After my children and dogs, obviously. Why is my lights flashing? But like many 19-year-olds, Kelsey is unruly, has high principles, and believes she knows better than her elders. Sounds like me. I am not the brightest. I'm not the... What is the saying? It's a plot pot. And on next, and I'm going to have to hurry up because I'm on sprints in 10 minutes. Less than 10 minutes because I should join the studio a little bit sooner than the time that we go live. Anyway, To Kill a Mockingbird. This is clearly not going to be a thing that ends ever.
I'm a book hermit, part of the booktube crew, sharing my thoughts, connecting me and you. With every page a new adventure awaits, a community bound by the love we create.